Welcome to Holostate Design's Thermatron Mite CW Transmitter Kit Assembly video. This video will help you create another great Holostate project. This video will take you through the recommended Thermatron Mite assembly step by step. The kit is supplied with a bill of materials checklist. Now make sure all the parts are in the box, usually in plastic bags, and you can identify each part. If something's missing, email me and I'll get it out to you ASAP. Refer to the layout diagram and the schematic in the written assembly instructions in the kit. The layout of components doesn't have to be exactly as shown in the diagram. Now, unlike a typical etch circuit board, where everything must fit in the exact through-hole or surface mount locations, the spirit of this kit is home brew. I intended it to be built like you would if you were home brewing it from scratch. Now, I'm going to show you how I did it. The first step is to install the phono connector and the BNC connector to the L bracket. Then attach the L bracket to the board with the number 4 screws and nuts. Make sure the nuts go on the top. Bend the leads of the 7-pin socket out as shown. Then carefully place it on the Mi-tube socket pad, lining up the pins correctly, and solder all the pins to the pad. Now, I use a couple of different types of socket and pads, and the parts in your kit might be slightly different. The next step is to wind the tuned circuit coil L1 and L2. The coil form has holes pre-drilled to make it easy to wind, with L2, the output coupling, in the middle of the coil. Wind L2 first, using the short length of enamel wire. Pass one end of the enamel wire through both holes in the center and wrap it around the coil twice. Then pass the same end back through the same 2 holes and cut off the wire, leaving about 2 to 3 inches of slack. Both leads of L2 should be sticking out the same hole in the same direction. One end will solder to ground and the other end will connect to the BNC center conductor. Then wind L1 28 turns. Pass one end of the enamel wire through both holes on either end, then wind 14 turns. It should just reach the L2 winding. Then cross over the L2 turns and wind another 14 turns on the other side of L2. Then pass the end of the wire through both holes in the coil form so the wire comes out in the same direction as the end you started with. I use a dab of 2 or super glue to hold the windings in place on the form. Before you glue down the coil, cut the L1 wires to about 2.5 inches and the L2 wires to about 1.5 inch, and remove at least 1/2 inch of enamel from each wire. And I recommend tinning each end. The kit is supplied with several Mi squares from Rex W1 REX. Mi squares, and I also call them Mi pads, or just pads for short, or 1/4-inch squares of copper-clad pads, easily snapped apart and glued to the board, making connection points for components. Here's a gluing tip. When installing Mi squares or components to the board, I find it a lot easier to put a small drop of glue on the board and then place the pad or component on the glue with needle nose. It takes very little glue to secure them to the board. Following the location for the components on the board layout, first glue the tube socket pad using 3 or 4 dabs of glue on the underside, but don't install the C4 yet. Make sure you orient the pin numbers as shown in the diagram. Then glue down 2 Mi pads at the location shown between the socket pad and the L bracket. Glue 4 of the Mi pads that will hold the screw terminals to the board at the approximate locations you see here and in the layout diagram. They should be in pairs joined together. Put a few drops of glue on one end of the coil form and place it at the approximate location shown here and in the placement diagram. Now make sure the leads from L1 are oriented to the location of the tuning cap CV, and the L2 leads are oriented toward the B and C connector. Give it 5 or 10 minutes to dry completely. While you're in the neighborhood, install the 2 pads that will hold CV, the compression trimmer capacitor, to the board. Use the lead spacing of the capacitor as a guide to placing the pads. The capacitor leads should be centered on the pads. Start component installation with the crystal. Bend the leads at right angles like this and solder one end to the solder pad pin 6 and the other end to the Mite pad next to pin 6. Using the same technique, install R1, the 100K resistor, from socket pad pin 6 to ground. Then install the 0.01 cap marked 103 from tube socket pin 5 to the crystal Mite pad. Bend the leads of the LED as shown in the diagram. The short lead is the cathode. It's also connected to a larger element inside the LED. Solder the cathode lead to the Mite pad next to pin 7 and solder the other lead to pin 7. Then solder a short wire from the same pad, the cathode connection, to the center conductor of the phono connector. Now connect the wires from the coil. Solder one end of an L2 wire to ground. Solder the other end of L2 to the BNC connector center conductor. The supplied screw terminal blocks in your kit might be blue or green, but they're installed the same way. First melt a little solder on the 2 pins of each block. Then melt a little solder on the left Mite pad of each pair previously glued to the board. Now, while holding the block pins against the pads and oriented as in the photo, solder the left pin to the pad. This will hold the block in place while you solder the right pin. Now, if the block is not straight, you can adjust it while remelting the solder before you solder the right pin. Once you have it like you want it, then solder the right pin to the pad. There should be enough solder to hold them firmly in place. Install short bare wires from the right screw terminal pad of each block to ground. Now install CV, the compression capacitor. Bend the leads at right angles like this diagram. It'll make it easier to solder to the pads. The CV in your kit might be smaller or larger than the one shown in the photo, and the leads might be pre-bent, if I felt like doing it. Install a short insulated wire from CV to the B+ pad on the high voltage screw terminal block. Solder one end of the L2 coil wire to the same CV terminal like you see here. Now solder the other end of the L2 coil to the other CV terminal. Install a short bare wire from socket pad pin 4 to ground. Then install a short wire from socket pad pin 5 to the other side terminal of CV. Then install a short insulated wire from socket pad pin 3 to the left screw terminal pad of the filament screw terminal block. Install the 0.1 microfarad ceramic cap marked 104 from the CV pad connected to B+ to ground. Finally, don't forget to install the 6C4 in its socket. Congratulations! You've completed the assembly of the Thermatron Mite. Now it's time to test your transmitter. Double check the connections and solder joints. In this type of construction, it's really easy to miss soldering a lead to a pad or ground. I do it all the time. And make sure a resistance check from the B+ connection to ground shows open. Attach a high voltage power supply, a key, and a dummy load. In my case, it's just a 50 ohm resistor. If the red LED lights when you key the transmitter, it's working. Congratulations. With the kit connected to the Hall-Estate Design power supply, monitor the output with a scope, power meter, or the S meter of a nearby receiver, and adjust CV for maximum output. Be careful when adjusting CV. It's directly connected to the high voltage supply. Don't touch it, and like I said, use only a plastic adjustment tool. Here, I'm tuning CV while attached to my QRP power meter. I'm on the 1 watt full scale. Looks to me, with about 185 volts on high voltage, I'm getting a little over 1/2 watt. Not bad. You now have a working 40 meter CW Thermatron transmitter. Welcome to the exclusive ranks of QRP Thermatron homebrewing.
I think he's making it up, guys.
The end, folks. I hope you found this video very helpful. If you have any questions or comments, email me. Glad to help. 73 from KJ7 Uncle Mike.